Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to be going through all the Blu-rays and DVDs that I picked up in the month of August. Let's get straight to it. First up we have 65, which sees Adam Driver. He's an astronaut and he ends up crash landing his spaceship onto Earth, but it's 65 million years ago, so he has to try and get off the planet while surviving these dinosaur creatures and the sort of general hostile terrain. It's a bit of like a mix between Planet of the Apes and Jurassic World. I won't say Jurassic Park because it's not that good. Granted, it's a lot cooler on paper than what the actual movie was. I did think it was entertaining. I was watching it thinking, yeah, it's all right, but in hindsight, it didn't really leave any kind of lasting impression, and I thought they could have done a few more things in it to make it a bit thrilling and memorable that they just didn't. But if you want a bit of average entertainment, this one's okay. Next up we have an amazing release from Vinegar Syndrome. One of their best releases, in my opinion. This is A Blade in the Dark, Lamberto Bava's giallo thriller. This is a pretty thick set from Vinegar Syndrome. It opens up across here and it's magnetised as well, which is why it clings to the stand so well. Now I need to thank 80s Film Fan for this. He actually gave me this wonderful set. So Steve, 80s Film Fan, thank you so much for this. I'm so grateful for you giving me this. It's such a kind and generous thing. So thank you so much, mate. It's yeah, great to have this. And A Blade in the Dark, I haven't watched this for many years. I had a few murky memories of it, but kind of remember thinking it was okay, although I did enjoy it a lot more on the second watch when I watched it recently. It really was quite entertaining and quite intriguing for a giallo because they don't always hold my interest. But this one is like a music composer for a horror film, and people start getting killed off in the usual kind of giallo straight razor style in the villa that he's renting, and he has to try and get to the bottom of it. So yeah, A Blade in the Dark, great giallo, amazing release from Vinegar Syndrome, and again, thank you so much 80s Film Fan for gifting me this. Next up is another gift, actually. Yeah, I have some great YouTube friends, but this was a gift from Alan Scouser. Alan, thank you so much for thinking of me and sending this on to me. This is Beneath the Old Dark House. It's sort of a modern indie anthology. Now, Alan didn't like this one, that's why he sent it on to me. Gotta say, I wasn't a fan of this one either. This one really missed the mark in terms of anthologies, and it's one of those low-budget indie films which just doesn't really do anything and not a lot really happens. And I feel like they feel that they can just rest on the fact that they're a kind of an indie B-movie when you actually need things to happen in a horror film. Maybe I'm being facetious, but yeah, this one didn't do anything for me, unfortunately. Still going to add it to the collection, and again, thank you so much, Alan, for thinking of me and sending this on to me. But Beneath the Old Dark House it's not an anthology that I would recommend. Next up we have the Bob Clark Horror Collection box set, featuring Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, Death Dream and Black Christmas. I did do a review of this. I showed off the set and talked about each movie, so feel free to check that out if you want to know a bit more about what's in here. But Bob Clark was a great director, and it was great to see him get sort of commemorated with this Blu-ray box set. Next up we have Bone Tomahawk, which is a good movie, kind of tonally all over the place, but a good movie nonetheless. I did watch it a while ago with my dad, but sort of pick it up on Blu-ray. But this film, it's sort of set in the Wild West. For most of it, it's kind of like a Western. And this woman, she's kidnapped by these like mountain cannibals, and Kurt Russell heads up a search expedition with Richard Jenkins and Patrick Wilson and another guy as well, and they head out into the mountains to find this woman and kill the cannibals. And it's a slow burn. There's quite a lot of dialogue for most part of the film, but I did quite appreciate it because a lot of it is like these kind of old time actors shooting the breeze and just talking, which was kind of cool. But then it does deliver towards the end. There's some brutal set pieces, and it gets quite disturbing when the cannibal tribe come into it. But as I say, tonally, it's very different. It sits somewhere between The Searchers and Cannibal Ferox. It really is on a bit of a crazy scale. But as I say, I do like the film. It's different, and it feels like it doesn't kind of pander to modern Hollywood, which is pretty good. Next up, we have Dark Glasses, the recent one from Dario Argento. And I was interested to see this, see what kind of movie he'd made. And I liked it. I've heard some mixed things, but I thought it was a good film. I was quite happy with what he'd done. It's about this woman who she's stalked by this serial killer who drives this van, and he's chasing her on the road one night, and she has a terrible car crash, hits this Chinese couple who she kills, and she sort of adopts their young son who was in the back of the car, and between them they have to kind of like maneuver around the city and find this killer who in the end is coming for them and sort of deal with that. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting film, a good kind of like cat and mouse, giallo, murder mystery kind of thing. Good gore in this film. Argento certainly hasn't lost his touch for gore. And I really like the music in this as well. I almost expected John Carpenter's name to come up. It's very Carpenter-like synth music in this, which I really appreciated. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with Dark Glasses. I thought it was good. It's not on par with like anything Argento did in his prime, but it was a different time and different movies. I was certainly not expecting another sort of Suspiria or Deep Red anyway, but as a modern horror movie giallo, I did think Dark Glasses was rather good. Next up, I picked up another shockumentary series. This is Death, The Final Journeys, and I've seen the odd volume of this floating around over the years, but I've never really got them because they're quite hard to find, and I don't want to get a volume out of sync. I need them all in chronological order. My OCD wouldn't allow it, but managed to do some sort of scoping on eBay and actually managed to find all 7 volumes of this shockumentary series, which is pretty awesome. So happy to add this to the collection. I did check out one of the volumes randomly, 3 or 4, something like that, because I didn't hear much about it, so I wanted to kind of judge how sort of hardcore this one is. And yeah, it's got some pretty gross out stuff in it. A lot of aftermath footage of accidents and car wrecks and things like that. Some quite gory and violent stuff in it. So yeah, just something that you don't see every day, and was really happy to find all 7 volumes of this. So that's another good shockumentary series to add to the collection. Next up from Scream Factory, I picked up The Doctor and the Devils, which is not one that I've heard of much, but this was a really good one as well. It's kind of like a adaptation on the old Burke and Hare tale. This one sees Timothy Dalton. He's like a doctor doing lectures, and he needs bodies to sort of experiment on and research on. And he hires these 2 sort of drifters to find corpses, and they quickly learn that they get more money the fresher the corpse. So it eventually leads to them killing people because there's no fresher corpse than that. But yeah, this is, as I say, not one that I've heard about, and found it really cheap on Scream Factory Blu-ray, so I picked it up. But it was a good film. Got some good British actors in it, as I say, Timothy Dalton, Jonathan Pryce, Stephen Rea, Patrick Stewart, and it just has a kind of a cool, kind of grimy Victorian feel to it. It actually kind of reminded me of like a Hammer horror film, but with 80s production values, which is a pretty cool idea. But interestingly, I didn't learn this until watching something on the extras, it's actually a Mel Brooks production. They kind of took his name away from it because they thought everyone would think it was a comedy. But yeah, he actually produced it, and I've got to say, it's one of the best things I've seen him produce. So yeah, really did like this one, and as I say, it doesn't get mentioned all that much. Next up, I picked up Hannibal Rising. Found this cheap and thought I'd pick it up because I haven't seen this for many years. I actually went to see it at the pictures quite randomly and haven't seen it since then. So that was around 2007. So just thought I'd pick this one and check it out again, see what I think of it. Next up we have the Hideous Bug Monster, which was a truly awful low-budget indie film. It kind of presents itself as a Boggy Creek type movie, which is why I bought it, but is anything other than that. As I say, it's a very boring indie film, filmed outside on somebody's street with nothing happening. And this one actually irritated me in how bad it was, because I like bad films that kind of at least try, but they sort of miss the mark in an entertaining way. This was just bad and had no creativity, had terrible acting, and I'm not sure why this one even exists, to be honest. Next up from Olive Films, we have Jekyll and Hyde Together Again, which is like a comedy horror. It's this doctor who is working with like this powder for some medical reason, but accidentally snorts it up and becomes like an alter ego Hyde character, but he's a real kind of like sleazy, kind of partying kind of guy. The humour in this is very kind of like Airplane style humour, so very quick, irreverent kind of jokes, but they kind of fall flat and it's pretty cringe most of the time. I was looking forward to this one, but unfortunately this one is pretty terrible. Next up, I picked up Magic, which I've actually never seen. Jason from Horrific Nightmares will shake his head when he hears that, but I never got around to seeing this movie until now. And sometimes I think I'm kind of at the point where I've seen all of the truly excellent horror films, but very occasionally one will come by which still proves that there are some amazing horror films out there, particularly from sort of the 70s and 80s, and Magic was one of them. This was an absolutely phenomenal film and I enjoyed every moment of this. This is Anthony Hopkins, who is kind of like a struggling magician slash ventriloquist, and he has a dummy called Fats, who he achieves more and more success in his act because him and Fats make such a great combination. But it kind of becomes increasingly clear that Fats may be his own person and has more of a hold on Anthony Hopkins than what he does on Fats. And I'll leave it there. But this is an excellent movie. Amazing performance from Anthony Hopkins and incredible performance from Fats, which may sound odd because he is just a wooden mannequin dummy, but my goodness, he brings so much to this role and has more character than some of these really bad films ever do. So yeah, don't be like me and hold off on Magic. Definitely check this out. This is absolutely fantastic. Like I want to watch this again now because it was so good. So really happy to finally check out Magic. It's a truly excellent horror movie. Next up from Wild Eye, I picked up Monster Force Zero. This is like a quirky little comedy thing with these cosplayers at this convention, and I can't remember how it happens, but they end up having to do these trials for this alien race, and they're like against this rival cosplay gang. It's okay, it's got a bit of charm to it, it's got a great sort of synth soundtrack, feels a bit 80s. I appreciated the effort they went to with this. It could have had a bit more. It was kind of average throughout, but I've certainly seen worse from Wild Eye, and it has a few moments and is generally entertaining. So if you do like your Wild Eye movies, this one is probably one of the more better ones that you might want to check out. Next up, I picked up a double feature from Scream Factory of Munchies and Munchie. So these are kind of like silly Gremlins like rip-offs. Never seen them, but I've always wanted to check them out. They look like a bit of silly fun. So I'm looking forward to checking these two movies out soon. Next up from Full Moon, I picked up Netherworld, which was okay. It's kind of all about sort of voodoo and black magic. It's like full moon having a go at the serpent and the rainbow kind of movie. For me personally, I prefer full moon's creature feature movies rather than this. This one didn't quite do it for me. It wasn't particularly bad. It's just not what I go for with full moon. I probably wouldn't return to this one myself. So yeah, not terrible, but just not my kind of thing. Next up from the Scream Factory, I picked up Nomads, which was an interesting one. This is Pierce Brosnan, and he's like this French guy, and he uncovers like a gang of demons in the city that are terrorizing people. But they don't look like demons, they more look like characters from the Warriors or something like that, and they're going around like beating people up and killing people, and he's kind of on the trail of them. But he kind of gets killed, and the nurse that looks after him in hospital starts to have the same visions that he had. It's a bit of a strange supernatural one. I really like the story behind it, and I liked all the supernatural elements of it. I thought the Nomads could have been a bit more demony than what they were. They would just sort of look like regular people, like street punk people. So I would have liked a bit more demons and kind of maybe practical effects and makeup and that kind of thing. Interesting story, but again, not a film that really did it for me personally. Next up from Scream Factory, I picked up Quater Mass 2. I've never seen any of the Quater Mass sequels, so wanted to rectify that. I really enjoyed this one. Not quite as good as the first Quater Mass movie, but still a great film. In this one, Quater Mass, he discovers this like strange facility that's just popped up, and it's like manufacturing this strange substance that they claim to be processed food, but it's clearly got some other nefarious means which the aliens are trying to use to take over Earth, and Quatermass and a couple of his colleagues are trying to stop it whilst avoiding some of the other people that have been taken over by the alien race. So yeah, it's a good one. It's got Sid James in a relatively serious role, which was interesting, and it's got a young Michael Ripper who, surprise, surprise, plays a bartender in this movie, as he always does. But yeah, this was another good one, like the first one. It's like got that kind of broody, sinister sci-fi element to it, which I really like. So yeah, good to finally check out Quatermass 2. And to go along with that, from Scream Factory again, I picked up Quatermass and the Pit, which is the third movie, and probably the most notorious as well. And this one's actually a Hammer Horror production, so really looking forward to checking this one out and rounding up the 3 Quatermass movies. Next up, I picked up Scream 6, which I haven't had a chance to watch yet, but I'm really looking forward to doing so. I know in this one they move from the quiet town of Woodsboro into the big city, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. So if you've seen Scream 6, let me know what you think, but no spoilers, please. Next up from Scream Factory, I picked up Teen Wolf 2. And I actually really enjoyed this movie. I'm quite surprised because I'm not a huge fan of Teen Wolf. I found the humour in that one to be a bit cringe and didn't think it had aged all that well. And to be honest, Teen Wolf 2 isn't much different. It's got the same kind of silly humour. Whether I was just in the mood for something a bit more silly at the time, I don't know. But I really did enjoy Teen Wolf 2. It made me smile throughout. This one, it's Jason Bateman, who is at college, and he is a boxing werewolf, which is pretty awesome. Who doesn't want to see a boxing werewolf? And he's kind of exploited by the dean of the university that makes him fight in these boxing matches. So he's sort of dealing with that and the fact that he's a werewolf as well, although everyone just seems to kind of get on with it like it's normal, so I don't know. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with Teen Wolf 2. I might try to go back and watch the first one, see if I like it anymore, because yeah, this one did kind of make me laugh and I found it very entertaining. Next up, I picked up What We Do in the Shadows, which is a rather good kind of documentary type thing from New Zealand where they follow a group of vampires who are all sort of hundreds of years old and see how they get on in the modern world. So just doing like everyday chores, going to a nightclub, doing the shopping, that kind of thing. It's okay. I'm very particular with my horror comedy, and I'm not too big on the ones that kind of make things kind of cute or endearing. They do it with zombie films quite a bit, and they do it with this to a degree. They kind of make them likable, and it's hard to explain, but I don't quite go for that. This is kind of a better example of it. It is quite funny in places. It's quite novel, and I did like the real kind of like documentary feel, like they've invited a film crew to stay with them. And one of the vampires looks really cool. He's basically like the Salem's Lot vampire. So he was great. So yeah, it did have things that made me laugh. There's other things that didn't quite land with me when I thought they were trying to be a bit too funny. But it is pretty good, and it's definitely an interesting idea. And the execution of it comes off rather well. So yeah, what we do in the shadows wasn't that bad of a mockumentary style film. And then last up, from Mondo Macabro, I picked up The Witcher's Mountain. Now, I can take or leave Mondo Macabro releases. Some of them are very weird. And this one's weird, but I did like this one. I had a good time watching this. It's this guy who's kind of travelling around, and he just randomly meets this woman and I guess like seduces her, and then she's suddenly riding around with him. And they go out into the mountains, and there's like a weird witch kind of like woman's cult that sort of come after them. It's pretty good. It's quite atmospheric, and it's got like those sort of European horror sentimentalities, bit of bad dubbing and some cheesiness, that kind of thing. But it was awesome, and it wasn't too weird that it took me out of it or made me feel like I can't watch this. So yeah, I did enjoy The Witcher's Mountain, and great cover art as well from Mondo Macabro. So that's everything I got this month, guys. Feel free to let me know what you think of any of the movies. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.